Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ali Mastardo, Senior Association Manager of PPRA. Thank you for joining us today for our second webinar in the How I Built This Network series. Today, we will hear from Delaware County, Ohio on how they improved network health with lifecycle planning. We do have you all on mute for the webinar, and we'll be using the question function on the sidebar of your screen for any questions, and they will be answered at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and a copy will be provided to all registered attendees via email and will be posted on roadresource.org. The facilitators for today's webinar are Lindsay Matouche, President and CEO, and Grace Stansberry, Account Executive of Vario Consulting. They are the marketing firm that PPRA partnered with to create roadresource.org. I will now pass it over to Lindsay and Grace.
Thanks, Ali. Good afternoon, everyone. We are really excited about today's webinar and about the chance to introduce you to John and Rob at Delaware County. As Ali said, Grace and I are the strategists. We work with a strategy and creative team behind Road Resource. We are not pavement management experts, but we have the great privilege of introducing you to some of the leaders in the industry. So Rob, I'll just quickly introduce them. Rob is the Chief Deputy Engineer at Delaware County. He actually began with the County Engineer's Office in '97 as an engineering intern, and since then has been involved in construction of over $500 million of road and bridge improvements. He works pretty closely with the state and local governments and recently served as chairman of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee. He's a registered professional engineer and surveyor in Ohio, so lots of experience and longevity at the county to bring to bear. So he's going to give us a really great perspective today of how the county has actually really pretty well revolutionized its approach to pavement management. You'll be able to see some impressive results here. John is a project engineer also for the County Engineer's Office and has been there since 2016. John started with the paving program when he was first hired and then took over running the paving program and managing the road network in 2019. So he'll also bring a really great perspective about the shifts that they have seen along the way. He is also a registered PE in Ohio. For those of you who know Ohio, we have both a Buckeye and a polar bear with us today. So that is our speakers. I'll give you, before I turn it over to them, I'll give you just a brief overview of what we're doing here. This is the How I Built This Network webinar series. And what we do here each quarter is interview agencies who can demonstrate network level progress on their road network over time. All of them have done that using a really robust treatment toolbox, and they'll tell you a little bit about their toolbox today. And we focus on identifying agencies who figured out how to stretch the same amount of money farther by spending smarter. So this webinar series is just one part of a handful of resources that are out there for you as you work on making this type of progress. You can go to roadresource.org/better to see where all of those tools are at your fingertips. So in this series, we're really asking how'd you do it? You've demonstrated this progress over time. We're asking questions like, how do you bring different departments and decision makers along? How did you expand your toolbox? What sort of goals and expectations did you set? How did you manage those along the way? How do you measure and evaluate progress? What are some of the key partnerships or resources that made it all possible? So that's the type of stuff we're asking these decision makers and leaders, and all of the webinars are organized on the website under the resources tab, so you can go back and hear from leaders from other cities, counties, states, and how they've done it as well. The webinar is organized by the Pavement Preservation and Recycling Alliance, which is a partnership between the three groups of EMA, the Asphalt Emulsion Manufacturers Association, ISSA, the International Slurry Surfacing Association, and ARA, the Asphalt Recycling and Reclaiming Association. They came together after doing a big research project to listen to agencies and say, what do you need from the industry? And the answer was really helpful information at my fingertips in one place. So this partnership is here to serve you, and all of the resources are free. And this is the single promise of that group. Everything that we produce for you is aimed towards this one ambition, and that is to empower agencies to be the best possible stewards of their road networks and their taxpayer dollars. So today we're going to start by turning it over to Rob and John and giving you a little bit of an overview of Delaware County, Ohio, their network, what's kind of unique about it. They'll talk about moving to a strategic plan and how that influenced their network. We'll talk about lifecycle costs. What we're particularly excited for you to see today is how they've really used lifecycle cost thinking to drive their network level planning. And they're planning about each treatment plan for each year in service to a broader strategic plan. We'll make sure to leave time for Q&A at the end, but we are watching the chat or the questions as we go. So if you have questions, please type them in there and we will make sure to, as we go, it makes sense. I'll funnel those to Rob and John, or we'll make sure to hit what we can at the end. So that's what we've got lined up today. And with that, I am excited to introduce Rob. Rob, thank you for being here. And tell us a little bit about Delaware County, Ohio, where you have spent basically your entire adult life.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to present and talk to everyone today. Delaware County is an awesome place to be. We are really right in the middle of Ohio, just to the north of Columbus. We are have been and remain a fast-growing county. We've seen a population growth of about 140,000 people since I've been at Delaware County. Population has nearly tripled in 30 years. I've been here for about 24 years, since 1997. So obviously things have changed a lot just since I've been here, and they continue to change. But one of the things that is most unique about Delaware County is, I think, the variety. We are very much a suburban community in the southern half of the county and a very rural community in the north half. We have a tremendous variation in both our types of roads, our types of neighborhoods, and the types of roads that we have to provide to our residents. And so that can present a challenge because we're doing things that are much different just within the same county and even nearby within certain areas of the county. So just to back up maybe a quick step, we have about 720 lane miles of roadway, a population of 215,000. We see a lot of freeze thaw through December through March. So we are fighting, like many of you, that freeze thaw cycle that creates havoc and wrecks some of the roads. But I'll talk a little bit about how we've gotten past that. Back to the growth, again, we are the fastest growing county in the state, and we have been for over 20 years. At one point, we were within the top 15 of the nation. And I'll get to this in just a minute, but really the game changer for us was in 1998. The county commissioners passed a permissive sales tax, and in Ohio we can do that. County commissioners have authority to levy an additional sales tax, and that was done in 1998 for roads and bridges, and that's been really the source of much of our success, being able to use those revenues to implement a program that I think has ultimately saved us a lot of money. And so the other unique thing about Ohio, for those of you that are not in Ohio, we have elected county engineers in Ohio, I think one of the few in the nation that are like that. But I'll say this, we do have, I think, probably a little bit more autonomy in terms of not necessarily having to respond to a city manager or a non-professional. That we have some ability to select what we think are the most appropriate types of pavement treatments without necessarily an elected body overseeing or second guessing that work. We do obviously have a board of county commissioners, but we have a tremendous relationship with our board of commissioners. They have a great deal of trust in our county engineer, Chris Bausman, And so we are very fortunate to have that. So next slide. As I said a minute ago, very diverse county, Delaware. We have primarily suburban single-family neighborhoods in the southern half of the county, and then rural communities mostly in the north half. In Ohio, we have many different agencies that maintain our roads. Odot, the state, maintains over 400 lane miles in the county. We have cities and villages. We also have civil townships in Ohio, 18 townships that also maintain road mileage. These are primarily the local streets and local roads. We, as the county engineer's office, are the engineer and advisor to those townships. Townships do not have their own engineer, and so they depend on us to provide recommendations and help facilitate some of their road work. And so we do that, as well as all of the county roads. We actually do the road maintenance on those roads. Next slide. So I mentioned a few minutes ago, 1998 was a big turning point for us here in Delaware. 2010 was kind of the watershed year where we kind of emerged from what I think was a catch-up, playing catch-up with our roads into what is now kind of our modern condition, where we have implemented and continue to implement a maintenance strategy. Before 2010, we did not have a PCR rating, but we did have what we called a road rating. That generally ranged from 6 to 7 out of 10. And then since 2010, we've seen our PCRs, about 80% of our roads are above an 85 PCR. PCR, same methodology as PCI, some of those of you in other states. And then we don't really have any roads below 70. We've worked hard to make sure that our roads maintain at a minimum level, and have been successful in doing that.
Hey, Rob, for people who are confused about that kind of conversion, is it fair to say, could you get back one slide, Grace? Is it fair to say that 85 converts to 8.5?
That's probably a
really
pretty close conversion, Lindsay. Yeah. Yep.
Fantastic. It's a pretty significant improvement.
So Rob, tell us a little bit about so that's the impact. How did you move to the strategic plan? How did you get here? And really, what was the thinking that drove a lot of the action as you evolved?
Yeah, so really it took a lot of work to kind of lay the foundation for what we're doing today. And that is basically, like many other counties years ago, we were chip sealing roads as much as we could. We paved our roads based on a worst first, like I'd say most other counties and most other cities. Our road beds were not good. We had failing road bases. Roads would break up every winter. The pavement crowns were rounded. We'd have low spots along the edges of pavement. So really, for the first about 12 years of my career, up through 2010, we spent a great deal of resources on primarily full depth reclamation. We did rebuild some roads, but we also invested a great deal of money in FDR, basically trying to recycle the material we had out there to build up our road beds, get to a point where we could actually maintain the road surface. And so what I'll talk about in just a minute is kind of how we've handled it from then. So again, 2007, 2008 is where we were able to, I'll back up one step. The 1998 sales tax, the permissive sales tax that was passed by the Delaware County Commissioners, voted on by the people of Delaware County. That lasted 10 years. In 2007, coming up on the expiration of that 10-year tax, the county commissioners voted to make that tax permanent. We did take a very slight reduction in the percent or the amount of that sales tax that went to roads and bridges. But really by that time, the growth in Delaware County, we'd already seen a pretty significant increase in the revenue coming in from that permissive sales tax. And so through kind of that 10-year roughly time period, we had done FDR or reconstruction on over 200 centerline miles of county roadway. We have about 335 centerline miles, just over 700 lane miles. And so we've done FDR or reconstruction on about 2/3 of our road inventory. And so from 2010 forward, that's where we've kind of shifted gears and focused on the preservation strategy and implemented some of what I'll talk to you about in just a minute. So I think with any type of pavement management system, you have to start with good data. We don't spend an exhaustive amount of effort and resources on getting data to the point where the quality of the data exceeds our use of it. We try to make sure that the quality of the data we have is commensurate with what we're actually using it for. And so we've actually done adopted kind of a simplified version of Odot's pavement condition rating system, basically broken it down to 3 primary categories, those being surface condition, structural condition, and then transverse cracking. We rate each of those on a weighted category to come up with what we think is a very close approximation of what the PCR you would get running through the full PCR evaluation for a pavement. We just do it a little bit more quickly, allows us to do it every year instead of every other year. And then, obviously being on this system for about the last, 6 or 7 years, John, I think we've been able to have some good baseline data for us moving forward.
Hey, Rob, a couple of questions on this. One of the folks wants to know, is PCR based on which distress protocol? Is it ASTM or what's it based on?
Odot has a PCR manual that is basically defines the deficiencies in a variety of different categories. We've basically simplified that into 3 categories, surface condition being primarily your scaling, raveling, your surface condition deficiencies. Your structural condition would be, your alligator cracking, your flexural failures, things that are actually compromising the pavement structure. And then finally, transverse cracking. We've kind of separated that out as its own independent category because you can have a great pavement structure that is maybe too rigid, or it's over top of a concrete base where it's exhibiting transverse cracking. And it's kind of an independent type of failure versus the other structural cracking you might see.
And what pavement management software do you use?
We do not. We have our own basically in-house spreadsheets and GIS data that we track our PCRs with.
Okay, and one more question. Your annual pavement maintenance budget.
Yeah, so our annual pavement maintenance budget is about $3.5 million. Again, we have about 720 lane miles. Each year we have a program somewhere in that $3.5 million ballpark.
Thank you. Okay, I'll let you keep going.
Okay, so again, some of the goals we have tried to establish moving forward is to maintain at least 80% of our roads above an 85 PCR, and then not let any of our roads slip below 70, at least not for more than a year until we get to them. And so that's really what kind of motivates and drives our preservation schedule moving forward. So to kind of simplify this, boil it down to what we're really trying to accomplish. Obviously, we want to keep our roads in good shape. We want to keep our good roads good. We don't necessarily want to allow our roads to fall into that category where we're having to, again, spend a lot of money repairing the road bases. Frankly, we don't want to relive what we've had to do over the last 25 years, from that 1998 to 2010 time frame, where we invested a great deal of time and resources into rebuilding some of our roads. We want to preserve what we have, and to the extent possible, reuse the existing materials that we already have, that we already have paid for, and then just minimize the long-term costs. We do, in general, I'll talk about it in a moment, but we touch our roads more frequently, but that's all in an effort to reduce the long-term costs. And again, with new treatments, John and I were just talking earlier with Grace and Lindsay. We are doing some hot-in-place recycling this summer for the first time. And so we've done a wide variety of different treatments on our pavements. We've tried to keep an open mind, explore some different technologies, and really try to use the best treatment for the situation. And so there's nothing that I don't think we're not open to trying. And so we're anxious to see what else the industry comes up with. So again, we'll if it's worth looking at, we'll definitely try it out.
Rob, can you speak a little, or John, can you speak a little bit to serving as a little bit of a tester for your surrounding townships and providing advice to them on those new treatments?
Sure. So we have done, over a dozen different types of pavement preventive maintenance treatments. We use microsurfacing very frequently. Some frictional mastic treatments, onyx being one. We've done some treatments that we don't see in other counties, other areas of even Delaware County, some of our neighbors and partners that maintain their own roads. And so we do try some different things. We have, again, a variety of different roads that we can try to find the best fit for that particular road. We have everything from 6 or 7 lane highways, in essence, carrying north of 30,000 ADT, down to the most quiet little rural road carrying just 20 or 30 cars. So we have really a wide variety of places to try out some different technologies. And really our interaction with other agencies, we interact in a couple different ways. Obviously, on a professional level, we have relationships in terms of government assistance. How we interact with villages, cities is a little bit different than the townships, just because of the way the statute is written in Ohio. We are, again, the engineer for townships, and so they do rely on us to provide the engineering for the road program.
Great. Thank you.
So I think the fundamental thing to get to understand with pavement preservation, it is a kind of a fundamentally different thinking than the traditional worst first type of pavement management. And it basically depends on touching and treating your roads more frequently. It is typical that we are doing some type of treatment on our roads every few years. It's very rare for us to just repave a road and let it go. We are there whether we're doing rejuvenation, crack sealing, or any type of surfacing. We're touching that road generally every few years, and that's basically to keep it on that maintenance cycle, which I'll show you in just a minute. So that's one element. The other element is we are really focusing and prioritizing spending money on our moderate to good roads first. That's our highest priority. The bad roads really come last, and that's completely not intuitive to most people, particularly the members of the public that we've heard from, and those of you that do try to implement pavement preservation. You may hear from some of your constituents asking why their road hasn't been paved, if it's in bad shape. Really what the methodology depends on is that your first priority is your moderate to good roads, keeping those at that higher level, so that those roads don't fall into the trap of the quick degradation. So I'll show you a few graphs here in just a minute. So this is kind of a visualization of what I just said. Kind of the same principle as emergency triage. You know, when a critical road like the one at the very bottom, that road is just too bad to pave. Sure, you can pave it, but it's not going to last very long. And so we traditionally, or back when we were fixing up our road beds, would generally reserve a road like that towards the end, and instead focus our efforts on the roads like the top, where a microsurfacing or some other type of preventive treatment applied at the right time will extend the life of that pavement. And so again, the kind of the yellow and green type of roads, we want to prioritize, you know, the yellow roads, if you will, and then the ones that aren't going to make it, we get to those as soon as we can, obviously. But if you're putting money into those roads ahead of your maintenance, you're really not accomplishing what you're not going to really accomplish what you set out to do.
I have seen a lot of metaphors about pavement management and pavement preservation. This is the first time I've heard someone to compare to triage, and I think it's so great. And I think it's interesting that, you know, in triage, you're not saying, let me handle the most critical care, the worst roads. You're saying actually what's critical is keeping the good roads good, because that's how you protect the budget. That's how you unlock more money for the whole network. I thought this was just such a cool way of looking at things.
So again, this is kind of saying the same thing, but basically, in terms of PCR rating, our highest priority is going to be in that 65 to 90 range. We will make sure that we are keeping those roads at or above that range before we let them fall below that. Because once those of you that maintain pavements, you know, once it starts going bad, it goes bad very quickly. And so once it's gotten to that point, you're going to be spending a great deal of money. We do everything we can to keep our roads in that moderate to good category, so that we don't have to worry about doing extensive projects like rebuilding pavements or having to go back and redo full depth reclamation on roads we've already reclaimed in the past. And so that's really the fundamental of our fundamental premise of our program.
Thank you, Rob.
Lifecycle, yeah. Go ahead,
Please.
Grace.
No, I was gonna tee you up. Tell us a little bit about what really drove this plan, and how lifecycle management really just sits at the center of all of your strategic decisions, one road at a time and looking at a whole network.
Yeah, so again, we've gotten to a point with our roads that we are now able to set somewhat of a predefined maintenance schedule for our roads versus having to simply react. You know, obviously the pavement life cycle we can predict to some extent. You know, once you get a pavement in a condition that can be maintained, we can do that in a predictable manner. And so this, the graphic, I mean, it's basically a depiction of what we think now is a much more predictable life cycle than it used to be. When our roads were failing, that cycle had to go very quickly. We can now prolong that construction, or excuse me, that maintenance and preservation component of that cycle. And so had some success with that for sure. There's nothing we're not willing to try. We've done a lot of different treatments. John can speak about those in just a few minutes, but we have tried pretty much, I don't know if it's everything, but we've tried a lot of stuff in Delaware County, and we have some treatments we really like. We have some that we think have a good use, maybe a more narrow scope of use, but you can see the list here. So, John, anything to add to that?
No, that sounds good. I mean, most of these are some of these are stuff that we've used a lot. Some of these are stuff that's still somewhat new to us. specifically like Rob mentioned earlier, the hot in place recycling. Next week will be the first time we've used that. We're currently exploring options for the cold in place recycling. There are places around us that have used it, but not us. And then micro is something we've been using for a long time. Other things like frictional mastic, that's a little bit newer. But all these are stuff that we've used that are kind of in our toolbox moving forward, and always looking for other things to use as well.
One thing I want to just key in on here, so we've interviewed a number of agencies like this, and this is one of the bigger toolboxes that I've seen actually. But it seems like it's kind of a linchpin in being able to make money go further, having a big toolbox like this. I know you didn't start here, but it looks like you've added quite a bit over the years. Is that right? Or kind of tell us, just give me the cliff notes on, what that's like to expand the toolbox, or how important that is in being able to achieve some of the gains you've achieved.
Yeah, for sure, Lindsay. We did not just start out trying all of these different technologies. We've picked up a lot of these treatments as we've gone. We've identified really, I think, kind of particular candidates that we think are a good fit for a particular type of treatment, and then really tried to select the best treatment for that road. Again, what I mentioned early on, we do have some flexibility being an independent office, independent elected office in the state and the county. We feel like we can try some of this stuff. Obviously, not all of it. We've had some treatments not turn out quite the way we thought. I don't know we've had any failures. I would say maybe just not quite the expectation we had. But I think the ability to try that obviously is one of the advantages. I think here in Ohio with an elected county engineer, we have the ability to try some new things.
Thank you.
So this is where I'll jump in. Understanding that having a robust treatment toolbox can be a critical step in stretching your budget further, using the right tool. When do you need the Dremel? When do you need the hammer? That same concept of a treatment toolbox. I'm going to jump over to roadresource.org, which is the website that Lindsay spoke to a little bit earlier, where the three associations came together to provide free resources for the industry. Way back when, it was understood that a lot of information is out there, but it's very difficult to comb through. So quickly, underneath this tab, Treatment Toolbox, you can find plenty of information and resources to help you begin to expand your treatment toolbox if you haven't already. If you've got a couple of treatments on your radar, but maybe aren't quite confident enough to use them, don't know what you don't know, this is a great place to start. There are plenty of decision-making tools if you need some help identifying. Looks like my internet's running a bit slow. If you need help identifying when and where to use what, this is a great place to start. But the majority of this information you can find in the Treatment Resource Center. And I'll click over here very quickly. Information on 18 different treatments, everything from surface treatments to base treatments for your roads to make A, your good roads go further, make them last longer, and B, bring your poorer roads up into good shape at more economic prices, reusing the materials that you've already used, making those decisions as smart as possible. So the team spoke a little bit about microservicing. I'm just going to give an example here of what you can find in these menus, a high-level description, some information about what the treatment can do for you, attributes, issues that the treatment addresses, and including common combinations, which we're finding more and more frequent, that agencies are combining treatments to get further and further. As you click through, you can see things like process and variations, everything from material to equipment variations, expectations. We know that if you apply a given treatment on a road in really good condition, you will get a different outcome than if you apply it on a road that's more deteriorated. So this expectations page can be really helpful in identifying when and what to use. You can go through everything from history to best practices. All throughout this menu, we've identified tips and tricks and rules of thumb from experts in the industry that can help you really understand a lot of the reading between the lines questions, as if you were able to ask an expert directly. site selection, material selection, everything from quality control, quality assurance to inspection. This is the place to learn all about those things. What we really love about this menu as well, we know that the highest performing agencies across North America are keyed in and connected with their neighboring agencies or other agencies who are doing great work, finding great success, and collaborating about what's working. We've compiled success stories from around North America, across North America, to really give you a sense of what's being used where. And so check out the success stories and the research and performance tab as well. These are great places to learn how, essentially where the rubber meets the road on these treatments, and all sorts of information here on this treatment toolbox section. Again, that is under the treatment toolbox menu on roadresource.org. This is all completely free for you to use and explore as you go through. So I'm going to hand it back over to the team. And John, why don't you tell us a little bit about Delaware's life cycle planning before I interrupt you again with another tool to use.
Yeah, so kind of here is just a couple of examples of life cycles and strategies that we have in place here at Delaware County. Schedule 1 kind of just looks at one of our higher ADT roads, a road that you're not going to be kind of looking at more of a micro or anything. It's got higher traffic. You want to keep it asphalt, but there's a way to still extend that asphalt without having to dip in too much. So kind of looking at the far left, that construct, reconstruct, rehabilitate, that could be, depending on where you're at, that could be a complete rebuild starting from scratch. It could be an overlay. And then kind of the way we look at it is year 2, that asphalt rejuve is almost automatic for us. It's a proven product here in Delaware County, something that we've used a lot and have seen a lot of success with. So almost anything that's been recently paved, we look at a asphalt rejuvenation agent around year 2. Year 5, that's when you start to see that surface cracking happen. That's when we want to hit that with a crack seal. That along with the asphalt rejuve, those are kind of always in our game plan, always in our plan, no matter what we're looking at. If it's been paved, year 2 and year 5, we're looking at a rejuve and a crack seal. On a higher ADT road where we're going to keep it asphalt surface, as long as that base is consistent, as long as it's healthy, then you can be looking at another crack seal or even another rejuve before you have to potentially do another asphalt overlay. Kind of the whole point of this is to be able to repeat this. So you get to that end of life. If this isn't healthy, you can't keep it good. You're going to be looking about $34 square yard to do that full depth reclamation at the end of its life. If this is healthy, after year 12, you're going to start right back over with year 2. So year 14, you'll be looking at another rejuve. 5 years later, after the year 12, you're looking at crack seal. You can just keep this cycle going over and over until that asphalt isn't good, until that pavement life is completely done, and you do have to go back to 0 and construct or reconstruct at that point. The second one is kind of the more popular one here in Delaware County. You're going to start from 0. Again, same thing as before. We're looking at a rejuve, a crack seal at years 2 and 5. And then when you get years 9 and 10, this is where you can play around with different options depending on your ADT, where you are in the county, what your existing condition is. That's when we start to play around with frictional mastic or microsurface or chip and fog. Normally on a lower ADT, we're going to be looking for a chip and fog. Our medium ADTs, we're looking at a microsurface or even onyx. And then you just want to kind of keep that as long as you can. And then if it's still healthy, you can hit again. We have roads here in the county that we'll hit with a second micro, or we'll just continue that chip and fog, or even another onyx will hit it. And the same thing as before, you're just going to repeat that cycle until you can't anymore and you have to go back to 0. But the goal here in these is, instead of rebuilding every 10 years or repaving every 10, now we're looking at 20, 30, 35 years before we have to put that $34 per square yard into an FDR. As you can kind of see on the right side, that's kind of what you're looking at average price per square yard per year for these different cycles. You get down to the bottom, Schedule 3, that's going to be your more rural kind of look at things. We have plenty of these still in the county, but year 0, same way. You're looking to reconstruct or pavement, asphalt of some kind. Years 2 and 5, again, don't change. And then you're going to look at covering that with a chip seal. And chip seal, I mean, it can be done many times. Eventually, you are going to get a point where we see a lot of bleeding, and you have to account for that somehow. But that could be, maybe you throw a micro on it. As long as that structure is solid, there's no reason why these strategies cannot be repeated over and over again. And like all we're doing here is we're just kind of extending the life of our asphalts at a relatively lower cost as opposed to what we were doing in the past, which was pave year 0, we're going to crack seal year 5, and year 10 we're probably going to pave it again. And that's all we were doing over and over, because we were just looking at, you know, when is it bad, and once it's bad we would fix it. These processes help us extend that and spend a lot less money in the process. So this is kind of an example. This is one of our older, one of our first strategic planning roads. It's like kind of like what Rob was talking about back in 1997. We kind of hit it with one of our worst first situations where we did an FDR and an overlay on this road. And then every once in a while, this is a very rural road that sees a lot of agricultural traffic. After a few years, we did have to hit it with some full depth repair just due to some age failures with the heavy equipment. But instead of us waiting and having to resurface it again or do another reconstruction, we hit that with a microsurface to extend the life of that surface. That was in 2006. And then after that, kind of following our plan, hit it with a crack seal and then a chip and fog in 2011. And that's then last year we hit it with another chip and fog because that road is still structurally sound, and we're able to just maintain that without having to put a lot of money into it. We're able to maintain it in-house and keep that cost low instead of having to put another overlay into it or another full depth reclamation to it. Yeah, kind of go along with this. In 2020, it was evaluated as current good. And just kind of like just like I said, you know, before we probably would have been doing overlay or mill and fill every 10 to 12 years. We have not done anything structural to this road since 1997 outside of the full depth repair in 2004. So this is kind of going back to the basics of everything. Typically, your total service life for a road is 20 to 30 years. That's not just the surface, that's everything. So if you build a road from scratch, starting with the subgrade up, and you do not touch it, you're probably going to get 20 years max out of that, but it's going to look like that picture to the left. It's going to have alligator cracking. It's going to have some failures. What we're trying to do is we're trying to extend that number to 35 years potentially, and it hopefully still not look like it's alligator cracking or failing. We want to do whatever we can on the surface to keep that failure from working its way down, to extend that as long as possible. And if that can mean more resurfacing, that's fine. But what we want to do is avoid having to go all the way down to the subgrade and rebuild every 10 years, every 15, or even every 20. So this is where it gets more difficult. When you get to the end of the surface life, you know you're going to be spending some big bucks. If you're going to know you're going to be spending a lot of money, you might as well do the investigation. Doing some cores, doing some borings, doing that little bit of work to figure out what's actually needed is going to help you in the long run. Finding out if you can do a cement stabilization. Maybe you have 10 inches of asphalt and you can just do cold in place recycling. Finding out what is underneath your road is going to go a long way and potentially lowering your costs to rehabilitate your road. Listed here are different methods, and everyone has its place and time, just depending on what kind of surface, what kind of condition your road is in. And again, without that investigation, you're not going to know that. You need to know if you have enough base to do hot in place or cold in place. If you have enough, maybe you don't need that full depth reclamation or traditional construction. So doing that little bit of investigation, finding out what's underneath your road can really help in the long term, saving you some money at the end of your service life.
Thank you. It's helpful to see those treatment plans really play out in real life. I think it's really interesting, the approach to Norton Road. What I'm going to walk through now is the tools that you can put to use on your network to evaluate life cycle cost and really see the potential impact of spending with those 40 years in mind instead of reactively spending based on current condition of the pavement or worse first kind of approaches. So if you're not familiar with roadresource.org, the site is full of a number of different tools, including the one I shared earlier. Probably most helpful in this situation is our Lifecycle cost calculator. In order to use all of the calculator tools on the website, and there are about 4 or 5, you'll have to log in and create your own information to use. So we know that the costs that our friends in Delaware, Ohio are seeing are likely very different than the costs that you and life extensions that you see in your region. So with that in mind, we developed an account login, which allows you to input your own costs and life extensions as you go through. So that's sort of the first step here before we get into the calculator. If you haven't already done this, just one point of clarification: as you enter your information into this custom account, it stays unique to you. Nobody at PPRA sees that. We keep it completely confidential. It's just for your use. But as we dig into the life cycle cost evaluation, here under network optimization, there are plenty of calculators and tools that you can use to understand sort of the basics and put the tools to use. So I'm going to click the About page here under Lifecycle cost. And this outlines just exactly what John went through a moment ago. As you can see, this is an example of 2 different road management approaches. In the gray, you can see where a road is built, and then after about 11 years or so, it fails, it's rebuilt, fails again, and then rebuilt, fails again. And as you can see, that kind of shark fin approach, that money can add up over time. So we've outlaid the conventional approach here. And then in blue, the optimized strategy, where a road is built and then we preserve it as we go with frequent interventions, just as John outlined. And then associated with both, of course, are a cost. And this is over a total network paved area, as you can see here. But as you treat your road differently, even though you're intervening more frequently on the optimized strategy, those right time treatments and lower costs can really add up to major savings when you compare it with a conventional or reactive approach. And so we know that not all roads are in good shape to get started. And exactly what Delaware, Ohio did was to intervene at various points, including the period after 97, where they brought a lot of their failing pavements back up to good condition with those FDR approaches. So as you go, as you can see the pavement deteriorate, there's always a major intervention point lower in the curve, but once it's in good shape, the name of the game is keeping that in good condition. So I'm going to do just a really quick example here. I know we've got some time set aside for question and answer. This is the life cycle cost calculator. And as you can see, it uses inflation, interest, and general paved area to help you calculate the life cycle cost of your pavements, whether you're managing one way or another. So it works pretty simply. You'll just input the year of intervention, and if you're looking at this year, that would be year 0, versus if you're looking at year 15, you would hit year 15. You select a treatment type, and it automatically populates the cost in constant dollars. There are pre-populated numbers that show up here if you haven't already created a user account with your own information. Those are North American averages, so they can be edited as you go if it makes it easier on you. And so you'll enter a treatment type, you'll fill out the treatment plan from year 1 to year 40, or however you tend to evaluate pavement life cycle. And then you'll enter an optimized plan and calculate the savings between the 2 approaches. I have a plan preloaded here for the sake of time. This is a real example of a road in Michigan, I believe. And this was a suggested plan to manage it. The road was failing and they found themselves doing a major mill and fill about every 10 years, which as you can tell, added up quite quickly. For the optimized plan, the suggested plan, they knew they had to get the road in good shape. So they added a full depth reclamation, got the road in good shape, and began to manage it more preventatively as they went along. So this calculator helps you calculate the future cost and present value, because we know if you spend $1 today, it's worth more than $1 tomorrow. So it's a simple economics calculator, but can really help you understand exactly the life cycle cost of your roads. You can see on the conventional approach, we have about $142 per square yard versus the optimized approach, $88 per square yard, which then calculates out to a total life cycle cost. And this is just looking at one road segment with $70,000 in savings on the optimized plan. But if we really think about treating our entire network, we would say increase the paved area to reflect our larger network rather than just one road segment at a time. The cost can really add up, or the savings can really add up quickly when we're looking at that optimized plan. So put this calculator to use. Go ahead and enter how you may currently be managing your roads on the conventional side, and then try out an optimized plan. See if expanding your toolbox and addressing those roads more frequently can save you money in the long run. Really experiment with that and start building a 40-year plan or a life cycle oriented plan rather than a reactive one. So I'm going to hand it back over to the experts, John and Rob.
All right, Grace, thank you. I want to say I think that calculator is a fantastic tool. I mean, we've several years ago we implemented basically a spreadsheet version of that, and I like the one on your website much better. But I think that tells the story. Really, you can customize your own treatment plan. And we've seen the real world validation of those figures. We've seen the real life savings associated with that more frequent intervention and more frequent treatment. I'll say again, it comes down to priority, and that can be a difficult thing to embrace because when you're looking at a road like the one on the left, you probably have residents, your constituents, maybe your county commissioners, your council, mayor, screaming at you to get that road paved, and that's completely understandable. But really where you need to be spending your money first, the highest priority is the one on the right, getting that crack seal in, getting the rejuve done. When it comes time, doing the microsurface, if that's applicable. That's what's going to save you money in the long run, making sure that those roads that are on the right don't end up looking like the one on the left.
We have a stack of questions piling up, but I'm going to start with just two of them, or two questions to you. Go ahead to the next slide, Grace. I would like for you guys to, when we do these webinars, we get agencies all across the spectrum, from those who are like, okay, we've got to start doing more preventative maintenance and pavement preservation and network planning, to agencies that are kind of mid-process on that, to agencies who like maybe expanded the toolbox with 2 or 3 treatments and know there's more out there but are figuring that out. For those agencies who are just getting started, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Lindsay. I think the advice I would give is there's nothing wrong with starting small. Identify, maybe it's a single road, maybe it's a couple of roads that you've recently rebuilt or recently done a major upgrade to. Get those roads started on a maintenance plan. You don't necessarily have to implement the strategy on your entire network all at the same time. Really, we started out small at first too. We did not get all of our roads reclaimed and rebuilt within a year or two. That took over 10 years, and so we all start from a different spot in time. And so again, start small, identify those roads that are the best candidates to preserve, and go from there.
The other things I can share that we've learned from other managers like yourself are things like you just have to start kind of getting a benchmark of how your network's doing. And that can be measuring 1/3 of the roads in your network each year. You know, if you just kind of start small like that, you can build momentum. The other thing, it just had a question come in that really almost puts an exclamation point on what I just asked you. And they said, it sounds like you're able to start because you had extra tax dollars. How would you recommend an agency get started in preservation who has an overall PCI of 70 or below? Is it too late for us? And can preservation help us catch up?
Yeah, that's a tough question, but I think,
Rob, is it too late for them?
It is not too late. You know, pavements are going to be around for a long time. No matter what we're driving, they're going to be running on some type of pavement. We're not into flying cars yet, so we've still got a job to do for a long time. The thing I would remember is focus on the roads that you can get fixed. It's very tempting, particularly in the environment we're in right now, when there's a lot of talk at the national level about infrastructure funding. A lot of agencies have received rescue plan funding. Some of those agencies are able to use it on infrastructure. The temptation is just to go out and mill and fill everything, to spread it around as far as you can. I think a better strategy would be identify those particular roads that you know you can get onto a maintenance schedule, do what's needed for those particular roads, get them up to par, get the base rebuilt, and then maintain them from that point on out.
You know, I'll put an exclamation point on that. We have certainly seen in our country's history when we got major infrastructure funding and everybody mill and filled a lot of roads at the same time. Well, 12 to 15 years later, we have all those roads failing again at the same time. So we've exacerbated the problem. Instead of using those dollars, keeping your good roads good and using it as an opportunity to really invest in the health of your network and move the whole trajectory forward. Next slide, Grace. I'm gonna ask you one more kind of bigger question, and then I would love to hit a handful of the questions that came in through the chat. You may have just covered this, but anything else you want to add about agencies who might be experiencing significant shifts in budget this year?
Yeah, so I think I already said it. I mean, there is the temptation, obviously, to get as many square yards of paving done as possible whenever you see an influx of cash, like many agencies are seeing over the next few years. We're hoping to avoid that temptation. We want to continue right on our current trajectory with maintaining pavements. If anything, we want to extend the amount of preventive maintenance we're doing.
Okay, well, I'm going to power through this Q&A and see how many we can get to. We have a lot of very good questions. It's about 3 minutes until the end of the webinar. We're going to keep you for an extra 5 minutes over just to answer some of these questions. And then whatever we don't get to, we will send out. So here we go. How often do you perform inspection on your road network, and do you do it in-house or do you contract?
We do it once a year, and I do it myself. So as the manager of our road network, I drive every single county road every year, evaluating each one and creating our PCR rating.
Thank you. I'm gonna kind of jump around here. Do you have annual contracts or do you bid each job?
A little bit of both. We do annual contracts for some stuff, and then for our paving itself, for our paving program that we run, that we bid out every single year, and we get a contractor for that.
Okay. What level of expertise do your inspection staff have? And another staff question, how many county staff in addition to you two are on your team?
For the paving program itself, our in-house is really just me. But our inspection, we hire a consulting firm to do our inspection every year, and they've gone through, I mean, most, if not all, of Odot's required asphalt and construction inspection trainings required for that work.
Do you use consultants in any other way?
Rob can probably speak that a little more than me, but for the most part, we use them for testing. We have them do a lot of our soil borings and stuff. And then every once in a while, they'll do a little bit of construction management for us, but for the most part, it's usually just either design process, but not, or testing.
Okay. Question, can the PPRA calculator be integrated or work in coordination with conventional pavement management systems such as Paver? There's no sort of sophisticated integration. If there's a more specific question about what can be done, be happy to answer it. The data can, from all of our calculators, can be downloaded into a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet could then be uploaded somewhere. One thing we have heard quite a bit from agencies is that the downfall of pavement management systems is that they are quite constrained by the data that you give them. So if you're not properly giving them the data about when and where to use pavement preservation treatments, full breadth of treatments, then you're not going to be getting that full range of recommendations for your network. And so certainly some of the data on the PPRA site can be pulled into spreadsheets and then influence your PMS, but there's not a more sophisticated interface. This is an interesting one. With such a fast growing county, how do you plan or budget for the future?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So again, we're incredibly fortunate that we have a dedicated road and bridge sales tax, so we know what funding we'll receive next year. That's enabled us to basically set up a schedule. We know a year or two in advance what roads we'll be paving. So that's a advantage I know we have versus some of our partners in other counties.
Okay. Actually, with about 5 more minutes, we might get to the bottom of these. Someone says, I may have missed this, but is your entire roadway system paved?
On the county scale, if not paved, at least has a chip seal base to it. There are a couple that don't have an asphalt base to them, but very, very few anymore.
We have a handful of township gravel roads in our rural areas, but yeah, all of our county 335 miles have some type of asphalt or chip seal surface.
Rob, you're already being asked to make this presentation to other counties. And I don't know if he's willing to do that or not, but what I can tell you is the webinar is available for download if that helps. How much of your budget is spent on preservation and how much is spent on QC/QA?
Yeah, so our annual road improvement program, which is our name for our annual resurfacing and preventive maintenance plan, is about $3.5 million. That is the construction contract amount. We spend probably on the order of, is it about $400,000, John, for the contract administration and inspection and testing. So about 10 to 13%.
What do you think about the use of decision tools like decision trees or decision matrix for selecting the correct treatments?
I'll start, and John, you can chime in. I guess, I think having been doing this for over 10 years now, I think we've identified some of our preferred methods for preventive maintenance. We know when we want to use microsurfacing. We know when we want to do chip and seal. We know which roads we should fog seal that we've chip and sealed. And so some of that is experience, I think. But certainly Road Resource, the website I think that's a fantastic resource for folks that haven't had the experience that we have. John, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that, part of it is experience, but the other part of it, there is kind of a systematic approach we've taken to it a little bit. ADT will play a huge part in a lot of things we do. You get over a 750 ADT, a lot of times we want to go after like a fog seal or a micro, as opposed to straight chip seal. And stuff like that is what we look at. Existing condition a little bit, but the ADT will play a big part in which treatment option we go with when we're looking at preventive maintenance.
Have you developed your own deterioration models for predictions?
We haven't, but that sounds like a great project for John.
Yeah, thank you.
Aren't you glad you showed up to this webinar?
Yeah,
what a great deal.
Very glad I'm here now.
Those of you who are asking if the presentation is available, absolutely, yes, it is. And with that, we've got, probably 15 other fantastic questions here, but maybe a bit more specific. So Rob and John, we'll send those to you afterwards if you don't mind helping answer some of those questions. Yeah. I do want to remind you guys that this resource will be available online at roadresource.org under the resources section, and also under roadresource.org/better. It is PPRA's commitment to you to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to tell a similar story to Rob and John. about your network for your taxpayers. And so there's a lot of resources and tools that we're organizing on roadresource.org/better to make that easy for you. Rob, John, this was such a pleasure. I really am impressed with what you guys have done here, and thank you for all the work that goes into preparing for something like today and being willing to share your experience with others out there who are trying to follow suit. So thank you very much for your time, gentlemen, and we will look forward to seeing you all again shortly on another webinar.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.